So first things first, Xavier. Uh, Amidst these strange times, how are you doing?
Well, I'm better than some, not as good as others.
Fair enough.
And I just take it as it comes. I don't know how much you know about my history, but
Sure.
I've seen ups, I've seen downs, I've been rich, I've been poor, I've been sick, I've been healthy, I've been in a coma 3 weeks. I lost my right hand, my playing hand. I've, attempted to have a career. This is my third time over like 25 years. So, it's just another day at the office, man. We got to get in here and the things that we are confronted with, we have to take that energy and make it into something productive. And that's that's my mantra.
And
take that bullshit, turn it into good shit, if I may.
Sure. And one word I wrote down when I listened to the album is resilience. And with what you just mentioned, kind of, you have these up and downs in life, but you keep on going. What do you attribute this to? Because you even mentioned it in one of the songs. You say, "I never gave up. I never gave up." So what kept you going?
I think I'm trying not to be full of shit here as I answer you, because I can tend to be full of shit, because I'm a recovering narcissist, so I make up all this stuff. So let's just say that, I started off, man, I was the 8th of 14 kids, and from a family that big in the United States, from day one, I was, fighting, as Bob Marley say, fighting for survival, fighting on arrival, because you're competing with, 14 other people who want to eat in a family that doesn't have money to feed them. So I think it was that. I think I had a chip on my shoulder. I was an outcast the first 12 years of my life. I grew up in the whitest place you could grow up in America, and it was hard. And then I moved, and I was a complete alien there. And then I moved to Oakland, and I was in the blackest place. And because I'd grown up in the whitest place, I was an alien in the black place too.
Sure.
So I was always an oddball outsider. So that gave me a lot of fire. I think all those things combined, it just gave me a lot of fire.
In this whole process, because you moved from Massachusetts to LA, like you say.
To Oakland.
Oh, yeah, to Bay Area, right outside,
yeah.
I think. What was when did music come in? Was music always a role, or did it always play a part?
Well, I think just listening to music, I remember as a kid being, drawn to the energy in the streets, like the punk music, hip hop music. It was just kind of this colliding force of youth and culture. I'm not a young guy, so I was there when hip hop, it was the beginning. So kids were battling on the streets and not battling, fighting. They're having rap battles on corners. People were boogalooing, breakdancing. And then, right next to us, you had the punk people, the goth people, the metal people. There was this, at that time, there was this new art forms were just colliding, that energy of the beginning of punk, the beginning of hip hop music. And it just fascinated me. It blew my mind. And I was really attracted to it. But I didn't start playing till I was about 17. It took me a while to think like, gee, maybe I should play an instrument. Like I should try. And so subsequently then, I started sneaking into the University of California in Berkeley, and I'm learning how to play there just by listening to what people were playing.
And you mentioned this is your third attempt, so to say, at this music business. You've been in it for quite a long time. You've been out for a couple of years as well. What have you, in that sense, learned about your musical direction and kind of what you because like you say, you grew up with hip hop, but along the way you've seen all these other genres come and go.
All over the place. Yeah, the main thing I learned, I'll be honest with you, man. Be really honest with you. I just learned to not give a fuck. And that's the healthiest thing in the world, because I think early on in my career, I was, signed by this huge label, and they have this idea of who you are. And you're like, really? That's who I am? Okay, here's the money. Okay, I'll be there. Here's the women. Oh, okay, here's the cars. Okay, I think I can be this. And I just really just got completely lost, man. For any artist out there that's an up-and-coming artist and you're young, and you can just get completely lost because, you know, you're busy trying to fit into someone else's idea. This to me is so dangerous. This to me is the end. It's the demise of a lot of artists. You know, trying to be this thing that you know, these capitalists with all their money have told you, you got to be that. And that's their own repressive fantasies that they have about controlling the world and money. And it has nothing to do with music, man. I'm telling you, nothing. I don't think those people even like music. That's what I learned. I was like, oh, wow, these motherfuckers don't even like music. They, you know, I'm an artist, and it means so much to me, and so passionate about music. So the thing that happened for me was I became older, middle-aged guy, and I just thought, gee, okay, I'm not a rapper. Let me check that off. I'm not a, you know, Justin Bieber. I'm not some pretty white chick singing pop. I checked all the boxes, and I just thought, who cares? I don't think anyone in the world cares. And I just feel really happy to take this guitar and walk out into that street, man, and start interacting with the world. And that changed my life, because at that point, I stopped wanting the shit. You know what I mean? I stopped wanting, oh, I want you to accept me. I want you, you know, I don't care if it's even a friendship, a relationship, a workplace. Like, that is one of the most dangerous things, like wanting so bad and you do anything to try to, you know, please someone else's idea of you. And so what, as being Fantastic Negrito on my third time, I was like, the don't give a fuck meter was just way high. And so I keep making these records, and I just don't care. People are like, oh my God, wait, I think you're a blues singer. I'm like, really? I am? Okay, great. I don't hear a 12-bar blues song. And I'm like, that must be good then. Hey, hey man, this feels like soul music, but I don't know, there's some rock elements there. And I'm just like, cool. Hey man, this feels like rock, but I mean, I hear all this and I'm like, that's other people's problem. It has nothing to do with me. So I just feel like I go and hey, learn from the Beatles, man. Have songs. First, I want to have a song. And if I have a song, then I can go, and that's why I self-produce myself. And I go into the studio and I kind of talk to myself, hey, you know, artist, producer, and I make the most honest thing that I can make in the shortest distance that I can get there. And that's how I try to approach my music and my production.
And it's quite interesting what you say, because especially, I would say, these days with the rise of technology and social media, that whole, it's a very healthy attitude to have, to not care about what people think, because that's all what social media is in a way, or most of what social media is. So how have you found kind of navigating now that you are doing well and your music is getting out there? Is that a strange kind of contradiction for you in a way that you have?
Not for me, because I've rejected all that stuff because I was old enough now.
Right.
I think being older this time, when people are like, hey man, I think you're too old to to break yourself as an artist. Like, no. They were like, hey man, your music is genre kind of non-specific. They're like, no. And so I think after you've succeeded, you've failed, you've done all these things, you just say like, you know what, guys, I've seen this movie before. And so I want to write about that thing on this new album, Have You Lost Your Mind Yet? Was about what we're talking about, was about our mental health. And I want to say our mental wealth in this climate of social media, and how do you and I deal with it on like a micro, not this macro level where, you know, Please Don't Be Dead was kind of macro, and it's like, oh, the machine. Sure. Oh, break out of these chains, man, fight this big titan of machine. But I wrote this album, which, by the way, was the most difficult album that I ever wrote, about us. How do we survive, man, in this new paradigm, you know, of this, you know, likes, followers. How many followers do they have? How many likes did I get? And we're looking for this validation from this internet, which doesn't really care about us and can be very toxic. you know, and we're looking for our value system and our validation from that. So each song that I wrote, from Chocolate Samurai, How Long, Searching for Captain Savo, I took the friends that I had personally, and I just kind of secretly wrote about them and how they were dealing with living in the age of information, so-called information.
Is that what made it, like you say, or you say this was the most difficult record you made so far? So was that what made it difficult, that you were talking about people you actually knew and kind of saw on a perhaps daily basis?
Yeah, and it's some I talk, like, I mean, Searching for Captain Savo, I was talking about me, I was talking about all of us guys that we travel around the world as kind of like these rock star people, and we can have our way with the world, but if women do it, it's a double standard. And that's just interesting to me personally. And how do I deal with a lot of my own bullshit? Because I've got a lot of it, you know? And so that was hard. Or like I was singing, like, These Are My Friends, or about my two best friends that I grew up with and how they were surviving, you know, with these cell phones, this technology and this instant, oh my gosh, hey, what's the capital of, Poland? You can find that out in 10 seconds, but doesn't mean you know anything about Poland. Or the, what are the dating sites? What's that one called?
Tinder.
Tinder.
I'm not.
Yeah, something like all these things, like just seeing I watched my friend, like, you know, end his marriage, everything, just hooked on these sites and like these new addictions with these cell phones. And like, how is that affecting us even mentally? How long? I was writing about, okay, people wake up in the United States and we go, and they lose it and they go, I'm going to go shoot people. Like, what? Yeah, this happens in this country. Like we have people here, any of us, that could lose it because we're under so much stress and duress and medication and anxiety that we could just shoot people. And then I have to read about it. You have to read about it while we sip our coffee over and over again as if it's nothing.
And I would say that even perpetuates the cycle, because I've studied journalism, and in the last couple of months, I've kind of stopped reading the news too much. I mean, I keep up with the main things, but I don't want to read it too much because it just depresses the shit out of me. So it's this interesting loop, like you say. But when you talk about these people, for instance, I don't know how many people have heard the record yet, but do they know this, that you wrote a song about them?
I think like some of them may have an idea, especially These Are My Friends, which I'm specifically, these guys knew.
Right.
And, I was both praise and in critique of them both. And I think that's okay, because I really think I self-critique myself all the time. So yeah, and it's just the way that I approached the instruments. Like I always write on this $89 bass guitar. It's called a Rogue. And I write everything, and it's very cathartic for me. I have to write, I have to play every note before, I get the bass player in. And that bass is kind of telling the story and telling the movement. And telling the drama of, that's what I'm trying to get it out in the bass. And I used, I kept a lot of my rhythm guitar, which I don't usually do, because I play with a really masterful guitar player, because it just was awkward. Like on Chocolate Samurai, the awkwardness and the turnaround on that rhythm of that guitar. And Masako Hama was like, I can't really play that. And he's a world-class player, because I don't really play that. And so I thought, this is the energy that I was trying to capture for the record. And I was in a much funkier mood than my other records. And maybe there's something very healing about that aspect of, funk.
But it's interesting that you say you write on bass, because is that where more of a funky element in terms of especially the rhythm comes from?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm surprised I write on bass, because I'm a terrible bass player. And everyone knows that. But somehow I like telling the story on the bass. And then, I got a pretty out-of-tune piano that I just kept on the record. Before I was using all these plugins. And I was like, you know what? I want this upright, out of tune piano. And that was amazing. And another great way to, if you have lost your mind yet, is I fell in love with the Hammond B3, which is all over the record. And before, again, I was using these fancy plugins, but again, I wanted the rawness. I wanted to anticipate that sense of urgency. And it was always like each song was like a therapy session. And I was like trying to help myself by talking about my friends and how do we get through this. But you better have a Hammond B3.
When you wrote this record, I don't know in what time span you wrote these songs, but what was your mindset in a way? Because like you said, with what you mentioned, that it was very cathartic for you. What kind of mindset were you when you wrote these songs?
Well, every time I go to the studio as an artist, as the producer, my mindset is, the last album, people are like, oh, your first album, you won a Grammy. And I was like, when I went to the second album, I said, I'm firing that producer. And so I fired myself as a producer. Second album again, oh, you won a Grammy. And I go, you know what, great. But you know what? I'm firing that producer. And I want my mindset to be exploration. I want my mindset to be, okay, honesty, and take your finger and just put it on the pulse, man, and feel it. And that means everything to me. And that's why people are like, oh my God, have you lost your mind yet? Did you write this like during COVID, during all this racial strife? But I don't know, I mean, all my records are kind of social commentary. I mean, I don't feel like I'm political at all. I feel like social commentary. I like to feel like what's going on, just feel that pulse and just start writing. And this time it was, hey, the mental health of my friends. I've seen some of them really ruin their lives, over, just being hooked on the wrong things from the internet, from social media. I've seen people just lose it because of social media. We get these images fed to us over and over again. And a lot of these songs are about this mainstream, like this media machine. And it's telling you, the machine is telling you how to think. It's telling you what slogans you should say. It's telling you who you should scream them at. And it's telling you to eat for breakfast, police killings, disproportionate African Americans. It's telling you gun violence, and you're eating this for lunch and breakfast and dinner. And then the people going to a church and kill people, going to Las Vegas and shoot up people, go in Europe and like blow up a bunch of people.
Sure.
And I feel like they sell it to us. The media is really not interested in our well-being mentally, our mental wealth, as I say. They're interested in like, hey, how much money can I make off of this carnage and misery? And I don't think that that's really a healthy future in a society for that. But what I do think is that as a musician, or as an artist, as a journalist, as a pie maker, as a ballerina, as a dancer, that there's a lot of chances for human expression.
And then, like you say, honesty as well. It has to be raw and honest. Because one thing I find with the news, and it's always framed in a certain direction. They want you to, like you say, think or perceive a certain story like they want you to perceive it.
Yeah, they're selling it to you.
Exactly. And, well, this I don't know if this is a good question, but because I've studied, this is going to sound weird, I have a degree in American studies, so I've studied kind of the history of the country and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, racial strife has been a problem. I mean, we can go back as far as we like to, and then these things have always been a problem. And are you hopeful in a way that finally there might be some actual change?
Well, you know what? I came from some very wise people in the southern part of the United States on my mom's side. And my grandmother was from rural, deep South Virginia.
Okay.
And she used to say, honey, you know what? You can control yourself. The person you can control every day is yourself. So I'm hopeful about what I can do because I have a lot of control over myself, but I have no control over you. I'm hopeful that I can produce, make records, create music that hopefully bring people together. Those things I'm hopeful about and optimistic about. But I know one thing, that if we want change, if we want results, we got to do the work.
Mm.
And there's the work. The slogans are great. You can paint the streets, paint the signs, you can scream up, but you got to do the work. And I don't know if we're ready to do that yet as a society. I can say I'm ready. And I think that's the most powerful thing. I get myself ready. Because it's hard enough controlling this dude.
Sure.
You have no idea.
No, but that's an interesting. That's what I like about kind of a thread, perhaps through the record, is that not a single person will always make the right decision. I mean, we always, depending on our circumstances, there's so many factors, aspects of life that will influence our kind of path and how we move. And then what I found interesting, and especially in these friends of mine, is kind of you acknowledge that not everybody is a saint, but you can still appreciate the good that they have done. I mean, for instance, to take something like The Sopranos, which is this kind of maybe a weird example, but he's like an anti-hero. I love The Sopranos. That's my favorite show ever. But
I still, on YouTube, man, I'm like, Sopranos. Hold on, everybody, 15 minutes here. Oh, my God.
No, but what I love about it, in a way, is that you feel for this person who is obviously kind of a gangster and then quote unquote a horrible person, but then you see this aspect where he cares for ducks and that kind of stuff, where he is just a human being like us, but there's been choices and paths that have been different. So I really like how you kind of emphasize that on the record. And what's this?
Well, I do, because like The Sopranos, I mean, there's a very human element to all this, and characters are not always absolute.
Sure.
In one way. We are multi-layered, multifaceted. And that's why with my music, I just fearlessly cross whatever path I need to cross, and I don't worry about it. I'm not here to make people comfortable. There's a lot of artists that can do that. That job's already taken. Why would I want to do that? I'm like, when people kind of scratch their head, I'm like, yeah, this is great. It's happening, because we cannot achieve anything without struggle. You can't say, I'm going to go work out and just hang out like this. No, it's going to be like, oh, I'm working out, oh, it hurts, I'm walking, oh, this is... And through that struggle, through that great effort, is when we get great results.
Mm. With the world being the way it is now, how do you see your music getting out there now? Because this is going to be a very different kind of album cycle for you than the previous ones have been.
I always just take things as they are, I mean, I'm not sitting here missing touring, and I'm just like, as my grandmother would say, I'm working with what I have. The tools that I have, that's what I'm going to work with. Because I like to always think about what can be done. I don't think about what can't be done. That ain't in my vocabulary. So, your journey in the paths that I took in life made me a very positive person. And I kind of like it. And even when I'm making a record, I feel like no matter what, in the end, all the music is hopeful and positive that I write and produce. And there's some hard pills to swallow sometimes, like your sex is overrated or don't be all up on me, all up in my space. But I think there's a healthy aspect to human expression, especially as an African American. How we survived was through human expression. Field, spirituals, singing. This is medicine for the soul, and that's how we survived. Through blues, through jazz, through soul, through hip hop, through funk, through all these mediums, rock and roll. I mean, that's one thing I learned from my predecessors and my ancestors, that we survived through human expression.
So, final question, is that ultimately why you make art, in a way? Is that kind of to make people feel and to kind of explore not only yourself but the world in a way?
I make art, I think, and I did quit 5 years and sell everything. But I think I came back to it because I was ready to contribute something.
Mm.
And I think as a human being, that is our finest moment, when we begin to live for others and we begin to understand that when we contribute, it is so therapeutic, man. And it is so healing. And it's such a way to build community. And if you're selfish, you should give because, you'll get everything.
One last thought then, because, you mentioned kind of the way you grew up and then kind of the things you had to see and then the things you've experienced in your life. Is that something because obviously you're very, like you say, self-critical, so you look back at it, and you mentioned struggle. So what's the path to where you are now in terms of those things? Was that a very difficult one for you and a very gradual one?
Well, I'm not joking when I call myself a recovering narcissist. So I think that people that are in recovery, that every day there's a new challenge. But I know this, we all have to stop inviting toxicity, or however you say that word, toxicity or whatever. I was never good in school. Toxic people or toxic elements, toxic things into our life. And then we're expecting these amazing results. Like, it ain't gonna happen. So for me, that's just always the challenge. It's just like, don't invite these toxic things to just live with you and be with you and become a part of you, because you invite in toxic, don't expect amazing results. So that's always my struggle. And sometimes the toxic things are just behavior for myself. So not perfect every day. It's a struggle, but if I got a guitar, if I got an out-of-tune piano and a B3, I'm going to make some records.
Fair enough. Xavier, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, man. And we'll see you guys again.